Mr. Bean's Holiday. Why exactly do we need another Mr. Bean movie was my main question, and the answer is this. The first Mr. Bean movie, just Bean, cost about 20 million to make and took round about 232 million worldwide.
Well, there's your answer.
Exactly. Simply, you do the maths. So, Rowan Atkinson has said that this is Mr. Bean's last outing. I mean, I have to say, I didn't think we were due another one, but then, of course, finances dictate. So, here we go. The plot, and I use the word lightly, he wins a raffle to go to Cannes. So now already we have Mr. Bean and Cannes, and you know where I stand on at least one of those things. Bearing in mind my feelings about Cannes, it's a bad start. He travels across the Channel, and then things happen, and he has to travel across France to get to Cannes. As he travels across France, he, samples the French food, and he baffles the natives, and he generally does the Mr. Bean thing by getting his tie stuck in ticket machines. It's a gag that we are all familiar with, but hey, that's what he does. The basic idea of the film, and I think this is kind of where my problem with it is that missing trains is funny. That losing your wallet is really funny. That losing your passport and your wallet is really, really, really funny. And that separating a young child from his parent is just more hilarious than we can possibly imagine. As we go through all this, you remember in the Mr. Bean TV series, he didn't talk at all, did he? There was no words.
No. I want to imagine that was for sort of like international sales.
Mm-hmm. And then when we got to the movie, he did sort of start to talk, but he talked about that, right? Well, in
Janet Street Porter,
yeah, it was, wasn't it? I was back there in the disco scene in Blow Up, which of course is her, for trivia fans. It's her stage debut, the screen debut. In this, Mr. Bean says a few words. The words that he says are basically oui, non, and gracias, and occasionally bean. Slapstick can be funny, right? I like Laurel and Hardy, okay, and I like the slapstick Laurel and Hardy. I have learnt recently, incidentally, to love Charlie Chaplin. I really was down on Charlie Chaplin. I thought he was a great sentimentalist, and I was always a Buster Keaton fan, and I was completely put right on this when I made a documentary about Charlie Chaplin in which I saw the light, and it was great. It was really, really terrific. And the thing about Chaplin is that he is anarchic and edgy and angular, and he's a very sort of strange postmodernist phenomenon. And in the case of Mr. Bean, he is none of the above. He is just annoying. On the BBFC thing about, they rate the movie.
Contains
it says,
scenes of annoyance.
No, it says contains irresponsible behaviour. And I think that is actually the pithiest review of the film, that it contains irresponsible behaviour. The question is whether or not you find people falling asleep at the wheel of a car funny, whether or not you find him accidentally separating this child from its parent, who then spends the rest of the movie with Mr. Bean, at all funny, or whether you find it, as I do, rather creepy. If you find the idea of him going into a restaurant and messing up everybody else's dinner by pouring the waste from his dinner into somebody else's hamper, if you think that's the funniest thing in the world, then you might find Mr. Bean's Holiday funny.
So this is one of these movies that it really, really doesn't matter what anyone says about it, particularly critics, because if you like Mr. Bean, you will go, and if you can't stand Mr. Bean, then clearly you'll stay away.
But the difference is this. I didn't particularly like Mr. Bean on television, but when I saw Bean the movie, I thought it was an admirable attempt to take that slapstick format and to put it onto the big screen. And in fact, I thought it was pretty good. I mean, it was directed, I think it was Mel Smith that directed it.
Yeah.
And I thought he did a pretty good job, and a much better job than he did with Blackball. I thought it was an honourable attempt. In the case of this, obviously the title invokes Monsieur Hulot's Holiday, and there is a scene very near the beginning when Rowan Atkinson strikes a pose, which again is him doing Jacques Tati. Now, where do you stand on Jacques Tati? I remember Alexei Sayle once saying that the whole problem with mime comedy was this. He said, I wouldn't pay good money to see somebody climb up a ladder, walk into a window and get caught in the wind. I'm certainly not going to pay to see somebody pretend to do any of those things. But Jacques Tati has a great comic timing and has a humour which again, I suppose to some extent like Chaplin, has a level of anarchy in it. This for me was like an anxiety attack. I mean, I worry about missing trains. I worry about losing wallets. I worry about these things that people are supposed to be finding funny in the film. I am entirely willing to accept, because I hear it on good authority, that younger members of the audience have laughed out loud throughout Mr. Bean because him falling over, blah-de-blah-de-blah. Fine. But my problem is not that I don't like slapstick, because, as I said, I do find Laurel and Hardy funny. I do find Chaplin funny. I do find Keaton funny. I find proper slapstick funny. To me, this is bad slapstick. It's bad Jacques Tati. And I mean, I don't think Jacques Tati's that great in the first place. And what I really don't want to see is somebody doing Jacques Tati but going, oh.
I read there was one review, I forget who it was, which apologies, but he said the older Rowan Atkinson gets, the more seedy Mr. Bean.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's creepy. It's really creepy. I mean, the bulk of the movie is him travelling across France with a child who he is basically abducted, because on the news they all think that he's a kidnapper. And at no point does anybody go, hang, this is really just bizarre. And there is something profoundly uncomfortable about it. Now, I don't want to overanalyse that, because the fact is, in the end, it comes down to slapstick set pieces. There's just a gurning cameo by Willem Dafoe,
right, he was on during the week. Yeah, I was having a chat.
He's not very good.
Well, fortunately,
he wasn't very good in the. How did the interview go?
Not very well.
Well, fine. Well, can I just say he doesn't make it any better in the film itself, all right? He turns up, and the idea is that he's a great art house filmmaker who's made some rubbish film, and it's going to go to Cannes. You know what's going to happen is that Mr. Bean is going to turn up, and everyone's going to applaud Mr. Bean. But Willem Dafoe, who's a perfectly fine actor sometimes, even he has no comic timing, has no comic spirit, has no comic... So even the stuff that you think that's going to be okay, it's going to be him, no, it's not good. And it's kind of relief when you get back to Rowan Atkinson going,
it's more Janet Street Port than anything else.
Well, that's it. But I laughed once, and I have to say, I think it was by mistake.
Can I just